Hey, Don.
Hello, how are you?
Let's see if I can make you.
You're supposed to say A-OK. Did you see Dan's
Sorry.
email?
Well,
A-OK.
I couldn't let it go. I actually then it got to the Hunger Games after a while with the three finger salute. It's like, oh, okay. So
Uh, playing footprints.
what's that?
Bob, where are you? New background, buddy. You probably can't hear me. Oh, no, we can't hear you. You're muted. Oh, you moved down a little.
Yeah, I moved down the pipe. I'm closer to the fireplace.
Oh, what's it cold in your house?
It's just dank and drizzly.
Yeah, it's kind of a gross day. Tomorrow's supposed to be worse for what it's worth. I think it's going to rain all day.
Oh, hey, Amber, I don't think I've actually seen you.
Hi.
I don't know if I saw you at the school the one time I was there. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Amber. I'm Dawn.
Hi, Don.
I've corresponded with you over email, I think, or maybe shared emails, but
yeah.
Nice to meet you.
She's the engine behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We need all of those people. Those people are so important to the process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Oh, let's see, Linda.
Yeah, Amber, thank you for noticing the minutes. Of course, I looked at the first page to make sure I attached the right thing, right? And I never scrolled down to the second page, and I don't know where all those markings came from.
Oh, I think that was like a draft that we were working on. I don't know.
Yeah, I double checked and all the information was right. But of course, because I always double check, make sure you send the right information. Now, of course not. I never scrolled down to the second page.
Yeah, I've been labeling the draft minutes as like final draft when I send them over to you. So you can always check the file, at least look at the name of the file and say, okay, that's the final draft. That's the one that we need to be using. It helps me actually find it quick. So
exactly, yeah, because then what I do is I remove the draft once it's been finalized and I save a PDF of the final version. But for some reason, the final version still had all those colors on it.
yeah.
So hopefully somebody actually reads these. It'd be awfully distracting to try and read all these.
We were just trying to show levels of importance.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And the yellow is just so bright and it's just so obnoxious that I was like, oof, this is not easy.
How is everybody?
Hi, Diane.
Hi, Diane. Good. How are you?
Good. So I'm on my cell phone, and it's a little bit of a wacky setup. I don't know if you guys can see me or what, but
just hear you at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
At least it shows up with your name, so we know it's not some random cell phone. That's always the worst when you get like 5 cell phone numbers and you're trying to identify who it is, and 3 of them are people that are calling in that you're also looking at. Always the fun part.
Yeah. The mayor let me know that he's not going to be able to. He's probably not going to make it. He's going to try to make it, but he's dealing with some city issues around parking meters at the beach. So
I saw an article about that.
I just saw it. Yeah.
Wow. I have not seen that.
Yeah, people are upset, I think, at least the article I read, that there's now parking meters or something. So
yeah, very contentious issue in the city.
I just heard that they're also going to start actually enforcing parking meters in the city nowadays.
Oh.
I never realized that they stopped doing it.
They stopped in Revere because with COVID, with all of the stuff with COVID, they were just, I think trying to take something off of people's worry plate.
Yeah, true. Well, that's good. I saw Susan joining, so that's good. We still have we still have another minute, but then I will ask Susan to stand in.
Yes. And I also have to jump off right about 6 o'clock if we're not finished by then. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going through just looking at the agenda. We just have 2 quick housekeeping items, and then I'm going to let Perkins Eastman take over with all the fun and pretty stuff that I don't have. But
I just have I have a logistical thing. It looks like you can't see a tiny bit at the bottom of my screen if I'm doing a full screen share. It shows me like a green box. Can anyone see the date at the bottom?
No, it's the
No.
very top of blue letters, but you can't read it, right?
Yeah. So hold on a sec. Can you see that now?
Yes, SBC April 15th.
Okay. Why don't I share in this mode if no one has a problem with that, just so I don't remember all the slides if there's important information at the bottom. So
Okay.
let me share like this if everyone's okay with that, just for the sake of seeing the full slide. And I assume Left Field will distribute this and everyone can take a closer look if needed. I just didn't want information being cut off.
Yeah, no problem. We have a caller 1. Do we know who that is? Is that someone on the? Do we know who that is? Who's on the cell phone besides Diane?
Joe Lewin.
Joe Lewin, that's you. Thank you. It's both good and bad, right? That we're starting to get used to the similarities and differences between the online platforms. Like Zoom, you can't change names. You're stuck with the numbers, but GoToMeeting allows you to oh, that's Joe, so he can no longer be caller 1 and new world. To that point, actually, that might be a good segue. Linda and I were talking before. When we're doing motions, I guess a little bit of housekeeping. Because we're here and it's not like we're in the same room, can we just slightly modify so that when you do the motion and you second it, can you state your name so that we accurately get it? That's what we'd ask. So whenever we do the motion second, just state your name, whoever's saying it, because sometimes it's hard to tell looking at all the faces. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course we have the recording, but the recording there's limitations to the program, so it just shows a gray screen. You can hear everything, but you can't see anything, so sometimes it's a little tougher to see. It's trying to mention something quickly. I think we definitely have enough people to get started. We're still missing 2 people that I can see from the, in addition to the mayor. So if I could ask Miss Susan Gravelisi to please call the meeting to order.
Okay, yes, very good. Thank you, Linda. Today is Thursday, April 15th, and this is project meeting number 7 of the RHS School Building Committee, and the time is 5:33. Can we have a roll call of the voting members? Mayor Arrigo is absent. Stacy Bronson Rizzo.
Here.
Dom Taramella.
Here.
Susan Gravelisi here. Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
Patrick Keith.
Here.
Diane Kelly.
Here.
John Perella.
I haven't seen him.
Okay. Michael Picardi.
Here.
Nicholas Rystrom.
I have not seen him either.
Carl Svensson.
Here.
Rich Biscay.
Here.
And Jerry Visconti. No, I thought I saw that Jerry left. I don't know if he got disconnected. Is he here?
Yeah, I'm looking again. He fell off the list.
He fell off.
He fell off the list. Yep. So
Okay.
maybe I thought I saw him earlier.
I did see him. Then I saw that that he left. So maybe he got disconnected. Maybe he'll be
Yeah.
back.
We can
Okay,
keep an
agenda.
eye on that.
Okay,
Thank
agenda item 2, and we have a motion to approve the March 25th, 2021 meeting minutes.
So moved, Diane Kelly.
Thank you.
Do you have a second?
Seconded, Patrick Keefe.
Thank you.
Jerry Visconti's here.
Oh, Jerry's back.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having bad connection there.
Okay, no worries. And agenda number 3, a vote to recommend March invoices move forward for processing.
Yeah, I can actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen real quick.
First, you have to take a vote on the meeting minutes. I know you had
Oh,
a
I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, we have to do the roll call again, sorry.
For the meeting minutes?
For approval of the meeting minutes, yep.
Okay.
So
Mayor
I can,
Vigo is absent. Stacy Bronson Rizzo.
Yeah. Yes.
John Chiaramella.
Here.
Susan Gravellisi, yes. Jennifer Hayes.
Yes.
Patrick Keefe.
Here.
Diane Kelly.
Yes.
John Perella. Michael Picardi.
Yes.
Nicholas Rystrom. Is Nicholas still here?
no, I don't think he's here yet.
Okay. we lost
Nicholas
him.
hadn't joined us yet.
Carl Svensson.
Yes.
Rich Biscay.
Yes.
Jerry Visconti.
Here.
Okay, very good. Meeting minutes approved.
Meeting
Okay,
minutes
go ahead.
approved. Thank you.
Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Can people see or read what's on my screen? I suppose. Question.
Might want to zoom a little.
Yeah, zoom a little.
So what we have are, and this is just part of our housekeeping, is to vote to approve this month's March's invoices for moving forward for processing. So this month, as per usual, we have left field's feasibility study invoice for the month of March, which is the same 21,000 that we typically have as part of our monthly invoices. And then this month, we also, in addition to that, have Perkins Eastman's first invoice. I'm going to see if people are able to read this. So this is, again, for professional services for feasibility study for March 1st through March 31st. So out of their total fee, this current billing is $42,210. So these are the two invoices that we have for vote to move forward for processing with Revere. So at this point, if there are any questions, or if we can make a motion or have somebody make a motion to move it forward.
I move that we pay the bills as presented by Linda Laporto, and that's Diane Kelly making the motion.
Thank
Spencer
you.
will second. A second by Spencer.
Thank you. All right, so we will take a roll call for approval of these invoices to move forward. And I have a slightly different list than Susan had, so I'm going to start with Michael Picardi.
Yes.
You, Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Grevalisi,
Yes.
and Diane Kelly,
Yes.
Carl Svensson,
Yes.
and Jennifer Hayes,
Yes.
Rich Biscay,
Yes.
Don Chermella,
Yes.
and Gary Visconti,
Yes.
and Patrick Keefe.
Yes.
And then I see Mr. Perella just joined the meeting. Thank you. I'll see if I can add you to the list. We are just voting on moving forward the 2 invoices for March for Left Field and Perkins Eastman.
Okay, I would say yes to that if I can put my vote in.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm going to give the screen back then to Dawn. And that was all the housekeeping that I had, Dawn. So if you and your team want to take us through your presentation.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good evening. First on our designer agenda, we've got visioning sessions, which I think Bob Bell is going to handle doing the update on. So Bob, just let me know when you want me to advance the slides.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So I'm just going to I just have a few slides. I'm just going to provide a very high level overview, but happy to pause or go into more detail for those of you that have not been part of the visioning process. So we have just completed, as of last night, workshop 3 of 5. So we're right in the middle of the visioning process. We have 2 more sessions to go, and those will be the next 2 Wednesday evenings. So we'll pretty much be rounding out the visioning for this month. And when we begin May, we will have really kind of a set of goals and guiding principles and those things that will feed directly into the MSBA's educational program, which is the document that they require that really talks about the future of the school. So next slide, I guess. What we've been doing in the visioning sessions is first each session we review what has occurred up to date, and the major exercises that we've gone through so far are to establish learning goals. And this diagram that shows the 6 circles represent those goals. A lot of it is really focused on self-direction, self-discovery for the students. It's also about critical thinking, creative thinking, cultural awareness, and good communication and collaboration skills, and of course, social and emotional learning. Companion to this, after we've continued dialogue about what the goals for learning is, was to have a SCOG analysis, which is to talk about the strengths and challenges, the opportunities and the goals for the current school and for the future. And so here we've just captured some of the major headings of what the group has identified as the strengths of what happens now at Revere High School. What are the challenges? And then those opportunities. And in some cases you can see that some of the strengths are also the challenges. Things like having a diverse population also creates a challenge in meeting the needs of those varied students. And so a number of these really overlap. We focus forward on the goals, which are to build a really diverse and unified community, to expand the opportunities for students, to rethink what a school could be, improve equity access, and ultimately produce well-prepared students. Next slide. These all feed into what happens with the design. So one of the things that David has taken us through are a design patterns exercise. You can imagine a school design is built of a lot of different qualities. These are captured in design patterns. I forget exactly how many David has, but magnitude of 60 or so, maybe toward 100 design patterns. And the group has sifted through these and really tried to focus on what are the top design patterns, what connects directly to these goals and some of the analysis that have already occurred. And what we focused on at the last workshop was the top 20, and it's evolving. So these 20 will kind of change and morph as we continue through the process. But I've highlighted a few things here that are captured in some cases by these 20. It's distilling it into a simpler form. There's a lot of focus on creating a real heart to the school, to connecting not only community, but giving a place for students to have extended use, kind of a zone of the school that can stay alive and active. There was talk about classroom clusters in neighborhoods to create collaboration spaces, but also to break down the scale of the building. We know that the school will be filled with a variety of specialty labs, maker spaces, things that are going to connect to pathways. There's a lot of focus on having very flexible and agile classrooms and labs. There's also a repeated theme of having a real safe and connected campus. So thinking of the whole site as a learning space for the students, and of course making those indoor-out connections. So that's not everything, but that's just really kind of a little bit of a summary of some of those. And next slide, Don. We also had a portion of the last workshop that focused on sustainability. And what we can see here is one thing is that sustainability will have its own focused workshops. There'll be a lot of detailed discussions as we get into the finer grain of what we're going to do with the project and what we're going to focus on. But at a very high level here, what we saw in the priorities were focus on the health and well-being of students. And that basically means that it's a great focus too. It means that we want to create environments, classroom environments that first and foremost are thermally comfortable, acoustically comfortable, quality daylighting, eliminating all those environmental stresses so that students can learn and that they can focus on learning. It's also, there was a lot of focus on creating equitable communities, engaging the community and connecting with them. And energy also rose into the top 3. This isn't really a voting system. It was just a way to get sort of a pulse on where a bit of the focus was. And there's not a next slide on this, but our next steps will be to continue to focus on the design patterns and start to connect them to guiding principles. We'll also be talking about, we'll have a subset on safety and security, and we're going to have another subset on the business and community partnerships. So I think the last session will be about really diagramming and starting to truly sketch a little bit closer to what the building could be. Diane or John, is there anything you wanted to add that maybe needs to be highlighted?
I would just add that this has been a really exciting process with a lot of community and student involvement. It's really sort of driven a lot of the work that's been done. So I'm really happy to be part of it. It's going really well.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. I would just add that the student voice has been incredible as part of that process. And we've got a great group of kids who are helping us with the visioning process, and they're really doing a great and thoughtful job of it. So it's been really eye-opening.
Yeah, I totally agreed. And so we're looking forward to rounding this out in the next couple of weeks. That's all I have for visioning.
Yes, that goes
And
to me.
Polly, this is you.
Condition. So We have, today being the 15th, is a big red block at the end of that. So we have actually wrapped up the existing conditions. The next slide. Well, here's what we found. So everyone has been out there, all the consultants. This went to the cost estimator. The estimators come back with his numbers, which we'll share with you in a couple of slides. But I do want to give you a rundown before that of kind of the highlights of what's here. The building was built at a time in the about 1970 where there were a lot of hazardous materials being used in construction. This building has hazardous materials in its envelope, in the skin, which is basically the core and the academic units, that 3-story building. There's components there that contain asbestos, the sealant in the window, around the windows, the glazing that holds the glass in. Those white panels have asbestos in them. And there's damp proofing on the mason. There's little bits of masonry behind these. This is basically a curtain wall building. And on that masonry that's behind these, there's also damp proofing that contains asbestos. So once you abate that, we're pretty much looking at taking the entire skin off the existing building and rebuilding it, which is what we've looked at and priced it as. That way, it's pretty much going to be a new facade, new building from the, at least from a skin and energy standpoint, because we'll be able to manage the proper insulation and the brand new wall system exactly the way that we would build a new building today. And this building will accept that because of the way it is constructed. It won't be it'll be difficult from a constructability standpoint and a phasing standpoint, but not impossible from a just purely building standpoint. On the interior of the building, all the flooring in the building, all the flooring and the mastics have asbestos in them. The gym floor contains mercury. All the visual display boards in the classrooms have glue daubs that they're all asbestos. The glue, that's pretty common. Glazing in the interior doors and acoustical ceiling, some of the acoustical ceiling tiles. The 2x2 is not prevalent in the building. Most of it's 2x4. Next. From an overall code standpoint, it displays many of the things that I would have expected from a building like this at this age. Multi-user restroom layouts. The restrooms, the building in and of itself, the spaces are large and pretty generous. The layouts of the restrooms are non-compliant for the multi-users, but they can be made to be compliant within the boundaries of the walls that are there, which is good. The single-user restrooms are all too small for current standards, and those would all need to be basically rebuilt and enlarged. The stair handrails and guards are non-compliant. That's also very common. The current use of the second and third floor corridor over the CAFs, that is non-compliant, not really a code acceptable use for that. That would need to be reverted back to a corridor. CAF serving lines are non-accessible. The locker rooms off the gym, they're non-accessible and they don't meet Title IX right now. Missing a fire protection system, that's something you obviously know. From a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing standpoint, at this age, 50 years, if we're looking to rebuild the building for a base repair, this is common to see basically a gut renovation, replacement of everything to bring it up to code and to get the next 40 to 50 years out of it. I mean, the systems that are in there won't last another 50 years. So we generally price it as though it's going to be everything will be removed and replaced. Next. So the energy code upgrades are required. The building code work area, which is where you hit a certain amount of space in a building where you have to bring everything up to code. Right now, it's borderline alterations level 3, but I think it's still at 2. And that means that 50% of the work, 50% of the building, if you're touching it as a work area, you would have to bring everything up to code from a structural standpoint, which is on the bottom line, not a big increase over the number I'm going to show you. AAB upgrades 30%. If you hit 30% threshold over the assessed value, the equalized value, we're going to be way above that. So we'll have to do all the access board work and upgrades. So essentially what we're looking at is a total estimated construction cost to rehab the building as a base repair that includes no upgrades to the program, no changes really to how it works. Just make it code compliant, take all the hazardous materials out, and make it last another 40 to 50 years looking at a construction cost of around $148 million to do that. If you add up the FF&E, 10 classrooms that we'd need for phasing, and the soft costs on top of that, you're looking at a project cost of around $181 million to rehab this building to basically get it to last another 50 years and be completely code compliant in every way with no program changes. I'm sure there's questions.
I just quickly add in that this is an option, as we've noted, that every project has to study. So no one's thrilled to study this, but this is a mandatory piece of peeling back the onion with these MSBA projects.
Yeah, it's a good thing to know too, to see where you're at, what you would be looking at if you were just gonna try to repair it.
And Dan, can you talk just a little bit about the asbestos piece from the beginning? I don't want people to leave the meeting thinking there's asbestos floating around the classrooms. It's all encapsulated at this point.
Yep.
So maybe just talk a little bit about the safety there.
Sure, there are no safety concerns. The building is, all the asbestos that's in the building is stable, and that means that there is no reason to believe that there's any concern about any of the materials that are in there. When the only time they become a concern is when they're smashed or they're broken up and they become airborne, which none of the materials in this building are like that.
I think one final comment to build off Brian's is that, yeah, the MSBA requires us to ask this, and it's also to cover ourselves, if and when we go along there and someone in the community asks, well, why can't we just, repair the high school? This is our answer.
I have a question. So would that mean that if there was a rehab plan, that we wouldn't be able to hold classes in those areas or near those areas because of that asbestos concern?
If we had a rehab plan, we would have, what I anticipate based on this building's layout, and is this would take 5 to 6 years to do this, because we would have to take portions of the students out, put them in those relocatables. We're figuring 12 classrooms, kind of like a little village of relocatable classrooms, and then take portions of the building over and redo those, move back into those, and kind of keep hopping around the building. It would take a long time to do it.
And will these
John,
include the phasing costs over the 5 years?
The phasing costs over the 5 years, that is in that little teeny tiny chart. You can push it. I can see if I can see it. I know it's about, I think it was about $5.5 million in just phasing.
Okay.
This is Don Charmella. So the abatement costs, even for demo, what are the abatement costs to remove these materials?
That's around $4 million just to remove the materials.
Could I ask a question on that overall number that you said? Are you basing that number on a construction cost per square foot? And if so, what would that be? What would you consider the current per square foot for a construction cost be?
It's not based on a construction cost. It's built up on an actual estimate. It's 25 pages of backup for it. So it equates itself back to a construction cost, which I think is 446. But it's tough to say for a repair project what a square, to give you an apples to apples, because every building is different. So there's some buildings out there that can be rehabbed for $350 a square foot, some that are 200, and some that are like this that are 450. It's not a number you can kind of pin it's not like a new build where if you ask me how much a new building is per square foot, I'd be able to tell you that within pretty close range.
Okay, well, I'll ask that question then. What's the new build of the high school estimated per square foot construction cost?
Right now, I would say $550 to $600 a square foot.
And the next question, what's the existing school size? The existing
336,100.
Thank you. Okay. And that's the existing school. Just to be clear, that's not, that's not the new school size or anything like that.
That's correct. Existing school.
Thank you. As Dawn was kind of inferring as well, you know, there's even though it's mandatory, there is a lot of information here that we can utilize going forward, and so it's not just a checkbox. It's a good starting point.
So I'm going to correct myself. It was 443 a square foot, not 446. Sorry. Although I'm happy to share the backup. I mean, it probably makes sense to give everybody in this group the backup and the cover sheet, and so that everybody can see how this was devised.
Yeah, if folks would like to see that, we can include it as part of the minutes package here. Okay.
Yeah, I'll issue a copy of the entire presentation, so we can include that for those who are wanting to read through every single one of the pages. But it is good information, and as Brian mentioned earlier, it is a requirement. So we can check that box and then move forward. I think Dawn, what's next on your agenda? If you wanted to continue moving us forward, if there are no other questions.
Schedule update, which I think is also Dan.
Yeah, as Bob mentioned earlier, we're about halfway through the visioning, or maybe a little bit more, because I think we're 3 of 5, so a tiny bit more. We're working on the site selection and site investigation process, which Dawn will talk about in a minute. And we're going to start looking at that. Also includes some look at preliminary options, but right now most of the blocks you'll see on the drawings are just that. They're kind of blocks, not quite preliminary options yet, but that development will start now as well.
I think before we go here, okay, sorry.
Sorry. I think we have a community presentation that we are scheduling for next week that we should all talk about at some point, either now or maybe at the end, depending on how the group feels.
It's actually 2 weeks out. It's the 27th.
Oh, 2 weeks. Okay.
Or 27.
We'll talk about it.
That's what I was getting at. Thanks.
Yeah. Do we want to wait till the end to talk about it, or do we want to do that now?
I think we might. Yeah, we might lose people. I think one of the things that we want to make sure we do is understand how the word can get out. It's one thing to post it on the website, but you know, we're looking for what means and methods we can get the word out to the full community.
So I do have to jump off, I'm sorry, and I'll follow up with John Perella on this tomorrow, but we can get word out to school families pretty easily, but I think that we want to go even beyond that. And what I can try to do is get a notice in the Revere Journal for next Wednesday's journal, and then the meeting would be a week and a day after that, right? Because I think it's a Thursday night that we're doing it.
It's a Tuesday night.
That's right. Is it the 27th?
Yes.
Oh, is it? Oh, it's a Tuesday. Right. Okay. Well, even so, people will have roughly a week's notice to get involved. A question I have for all of you is, are there any limitations on participation size? Like, I know sometimes when we do a webinar, the most we can have is 500 people. And I don't know if this format works that way, or that's typically on a Zoom webinar.
We'll look into that. We'll see what GoToMeeting has, and if one is better than the other, or has a larger capacity. We have both, so we can do either Zoom or GoToMeeting. I'm wondering, would it make more sense to keep this, since we're used to meeting on a Thursday? Do we have time on our schedule to push it to 4/29, where that makes sense for everyone, or is the Tuesday good for us? And I guess that's a question for the design team. I got right.
I know we've got this coordinated among a number of specialists and translators that we've lined up.
Okay,
So I can't give you an immediate answer on something like that. But
let's keep it on Tuesday then. Thank you.
Okay.
It's been on the books for a while.
All right, I'm going to jump off. I'll, John Perella, can I ask you to make sure we follow up on this tomorrow and get notifications out on that meeting?
You got it. I'll take notes from here on in.
Great, thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Diane.
Thanks, Diane.
Hi, Diane.
Right, Diane.
All right.
Dan, yeah, I was just going to say, Dan, is there anything else you wanted to highlight on the schedule before we move on?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. Very good. Brian Dakin and I are going to do a little teamwork here. So, Brian, let me know. Well, actually, Dan, you put this slide together. Is this something that you wanted to speak to? Essentially,
It's just the
Go ahead.
overview of all the sites if you guys need it. There's
Yep.
like little factoids about all the sites if you guys need to refer to them.
Okay.
Yeah, this will
And
evolve
again,
as the options all come together. So it's a good thing to sort of, we'll be getting into this in more detail at future meetings, but just getting used to the format would be good.
And we'll share this out, as Linda said, so that you can read the minute text that was on that slide. Okay, Brian.
Sounds good.
Existing high school site.
Sure. So we're going to weave together just some updates that have mostly gone through the site subcommittee. We've met 4 times on Mondays, had some good working sessions with that subcommittee, and wanted to just bring some stuff back to this committee that's all draft, not looking for any decisions on this site by site. And some of these sites, Perkins Eastman has some test fits. They're showing buildings on them. Some are still sort of early in the research phase of are they viable. A lot of them center around quantifying eminent domain opportunities. And that's what you're going to see on a lot of these slides that sort of look like this. I don't want anyone to panic and think that we're suggesting eminent domain everything here, but we needed to break it into some type of zones. So as options come together, we can be putting approximate values. The values that are used here are assessed values. They're not blown up to include relocation costs or any premiums, but at least the assessed values of the parcel will help. And what you can see on the existing site is 2 main parcels, 15.1 acres where the existing high school is, and 11.7 for the Rumney Marsh up to Ambrose Park in there. And a handful of areas, we'll talk about some more that have come up recently a few slides later, but a handful of areas broken up into assessed value for consideration by the team, site subcommittee, and the building committee on whether eminent domain really might bring something to these options as they develop. So, Dawn, I'll let you talk about your work on this site.
Absolutely. So just quick overview. Again, these are test fits. Some of them you may have seen before. This one in particular came out of our interview and a suggestion for an ad reno solution at the existing high school site. So this is zoomed out a little bit from Brian's slide, but what you see here is Aracola Park. The existing building is sort of under the 2 and 3 area. And the proposed would be to build some new classroom wings in the existing parking lot that would allow us to then take down part of the existing building and renovate through the middle, and then demo and add a new freshman academy wing with some additional programs that would take advantage of the existing field house, which is larger than the MSBA would otherwise build in new construction, and basically stays within the footprint of that 15-ish acres, because I think this multi-use field actually was lumped in with Rumney Marsh on that. One suggestion that came out since the interview came out, consider eminent domain of this piece, which Brian spoke about. It's one of the sections that we identified to be able to build this freshman academy over here. So then you'd have the classroom sides all on the east of the renovated field house and central core community spaces of the building, and then allow, replacement of the parking up on the school street side. So there are pros and cons. I'm not going to read through everything because there's a handful of these, especially on this particular site. This is another scenario where you essentially build 3 new classroom wings renovate through the middle, and then take down the front of the building at School Street and replace it with parking. And the benefit to this is the Aracola fields remain unchanged, or, you know, if they're not impacted, if you will, as far as displacement. This would be a different scenario. One of the benefits of building on this site really is to consider renovating the 28,000-ish square foot field house. There's some real value there as far as space that, again, the MSBA doesn't otherwise allow you to build to that size, much less reimburse. So just to recognize that there's value there. And in this scenario, the orange is consideration for eminent domain. Again, you've got the 3 classroom bars. The 3 classroom bars stem from our original concept about one of the classroom bars being multi-story freshman academy, dedicated freshman academy. And then the other 2 are a combination of 10, 12 grades. And you'll notice that they're always linear in as best we can, east-west facing, so that, or east-west orientation, so that they have north and south facing classrooms, which is ideal natural light daylighting, as Bob mentioned earlier, as far as the well-being of students. But what this does is displaces one of the fields and would be replaced in this location, and then you'd have parking with circulation up to the existing parking along the east. Last new construction option is all new in this potentially eminent domain location that would allow the existing building to exist like it does today, construction nearby, and then create a campus with Rumney Marsh that the fields are not impacted, and this building could potentially either be demolished or, you know, a future project at the, you know, to alleviate overcrowding. And then this was also from the interview, new construction on the Aracola pieces, and then basically once the existing building comes down, you replace the Article 97 fields. There is consideration to alleviate some of the tightness of the site for, you know, building. You can see we're right up against it here as far as fitting a footprint in with the general square footage. It's a large building. So considering that for, you know, entry, drop off, parking, etc. So there's no actual building on there. Brian, you want to speak to the Ambrose Park, which I think is a newer scenario that is being considered?
Yeah, and I want to give a thumbs up to Carl. I'm going to give credit to Carl for to sort of talking this idea out, and I've been thinking about it for a day or two as we were looking at the south part of the site. The basic idea is there anything we could do on the north side of Rumney Marsh in terms of, again, what we're coming at this high level is turn over every stone right now, just as sort of the high level. You see a lot of sort of radical ideas here, but that's where we have to start. But so I looked at this, and maybe not even all 3 of these areas. You see I have area X, Y, and Z labeled, but certainly X and Z start creating a real good site, and all 3 of them together, there's actually something potentially feasible here. Now, Article 97 would still be in play. We'd have to do something with relocating that parkland, and that is also a good deal of eminent domain, but I think it's a slightly different, interesting way to think about this. And I think it's something that we'll pursue a little bit in the coming weeks and probably bring some updates through the site subcommittee before it gets back to this group.
Great. Wonderland. I think this was a straightforward site, you know. This again came from the interview as a test fit, but all new construction trying to not use the entire site. The red would be left for a future development if desired. What we're showing is the bare minimum of site with approximately 450 spaces, a multi-use field, and multiple tennis courts. And then, of course, there'll be outdoor learning spaces throughout. But I know that some of the downsides to the site have to do with proximity, safety of pedestrians, connections to the city center. So we haven't done a lot with this since the interview, except recognizing that you know, it needs to be brought along for the sake of conversation, and we can certainly do future studies if that's desirable.
And we don't have a parcel map there because it's probably the easiest of all of them as far as parcels go. It's one parcel. We don't believe there'd be any associated eminent domain beyond this one parcel. So there's at least something simple about this. One landowner, one person to negotiate with. But you know, that's just one consideration of many we'll be asking you all to consider. So McKinley site is another site that through the site subcommittee we really wanted to just vet. And I think a lot of the vetting here exposes what a lot of you folks from the city probably could already assume, that it just never is going to be quite big enough. But 1.14 is the acreage that is owned by the city where the old school and basketball courts are. And you're really even limited of how far you could go in terms of eminent domain ideas by the hill, heading up Vane and Reservoir. So even with a real aggressive eminent domain approach, you're really still only approaching a handful of acres. We circled the school and where over at Harry Della Russo, simply because we know it's there. It could create an interesting adjacency, but we don't view that as fair game to build on or displace yet. That's something that we'll be talking with the site subcommittee a little bit more, but wanted to acknowledge it's there. This would be a real congested location. Probably wouldn't be able to fit fields, so I'm not sure how much we're going to be able to pretty up this option, but we'll continue to work with it. Caddy Farms is another that we've been looking at since day one, and instead of the parcel maps, this sort of 3D site view is a little easier way to put it for you to all visualize it. You can see it's literally in the corner of the city, up connected to Saugus. Really peeling back the onion on this one, we think we'd have to eminent domain our way in, and that's what's shown in orange in the bottom left. This is a landlocked parcel, basically. The only roads that butt up to it are actually Saugus roads. We think that a main entry off of Saugus probably wouldn't be desirable. It would certainly be a challenge. It would bring in a lot of coordination and negotiation with Saugus. We think the main road would have to come in up through those eminent domain, cross the bike trail there. And we probably would need to find ways to connect to some of these Saugus roads, because I think one way in, one way out probably wouldn't work. But this is also, so this is a site that, you know, needs to be purchased, the Caddy Farm 25 acres, but I think that doesn't get you all the way there. It would also require some eminent domain. It's also, as you know, adjacent to the power line. So it's one of the biggest open spots in the city, but we're not sure this is ever going to come out looking terribly rosy. And I know the school folks and folks even at the site subcommittee level have really just acknowledged where this is in the city kind of puts it at a massive disadvantage. Another site that came up, again, turning over all stones, working with the site subcommittee, Carl, Don, people have had some ideas, got them over to us. These are all occupied areas. The area in red is the Stop and Shop down at Squire Road. The area in yellow next to it is the state DPW yard in the Squire. And you know, this is definitely a site that was worth looking at. It's in an odd spot, surrounded by roads. It's not huge. It could get up to the 10, 11 acre mark if we took the whole footprint and the road going through there. And another thing we'll be following up a little bit on this that Carl did point out is this is adjacent to some land over behind the St. Mary's Fields. I know there's been a lot of development there recently, but I'm going to take a look at what space is left over there. The idea might be that, you know, this certainly wouldn't fit a building and a few fields, but perhaps some sort of adjacent field in that behind St. Mary's area, which is down in bottom left of this, might come in and help. But you know, one of the few spaces that could sustain it. It's not hundreds of houses. It's 3 or 4 entities that would need to be dealt with via eminent domain or purchase. So it has some appeal to it, but again, not in a great location. I think ultimately when we get to talking about education, no one will be thrilled about it being butted against 2 highways.
And we did a quick, sorry. We did a quick test fit just with one of the other new construction footprints. And as you can see, the footprint of the building, and sure, you could tighten it up a little bit, but the footprint of the building barely fits within the parameters of what Brian was describing. These are the program spaces from the site that actually don't. I mean, that's not to say you couldn't weave some parking in and around the footprint, but you know, you can see that the size of the field and the tennis courts simply would not fit. One thing we did discuss is these are the classroom wings, and taking those off and just going vertical, you'd basically be looking at 6-ish stories of, you know, basically a high rise of learning spaces. So that would allow some of these site programs to fit, but if that's something that's desirable, it's certainly something we can study for everyone. Are you going to speak to this, or am I, Brian?
Yeah,
you can read it, but
yeah, I think you run with it, because I think when we get to the chart at the end, I can sort of explain. Well, you know, parts. This is all owned by the city. It would definitely have some. We wouldn't need to purchase the land, but there certainly would be relocation costs and process that we're looking into and trying to chart out.
Yep. So what we're showing here, which you can't read, but we can certainly share this information, is we went and documented every single property and how many units exist in them. We made it graphically a little bit clearer, and then identified what is veteran units, federal units, and elderly units. So those are the gray, blue, and orange respectively. And the numbers simply say how many units are within each one. So this is the extent of those properties. And what we did was, for the sake of the interview, we assumed we could, you know, the entire property was at play, but recognizing there may be complexities in that, and by the way, there's 430 total units. We looked at different ways of impacting that property so that all of the units wouldn't necessarily need to be displaced. So we've got 3 different options. We've got an A, a B, and a C. We've studied different test fits on those options. I'm going to keep it really simple tonight as far as just showing one on each, but there are multiple that we've looked at. So the range is somewhere in the, you know, 260 to 280-ish units impacted. Since we presented this on Monday, you should know that we're also looking to tighten both the footprint of the building and also how the site amenities could be organized around the building to try and minimize the amount of units that are impacted. So that is underway, and I don't have anything graphically to show on that tonight, but just know that that work is underway. So under the A scenario, that has us at just under 280 units. We've got a building footprint, the fields, tennis, and some parking spots. Potentially, you could keep Adams running up through it, but that would split the site. But this is a scenario that impacts probably the most. It does keep the eastern side of Constitution and kind of keeps that loop happening there. This is more or less what we showed for the interview. Recognizing, I think on the interview, we said, oh, you could build some new housing here for some of the displaced residents, as well as on this side. And I think we kind of had larger fields and more dense housing. But this impacts, sorry, I have to move my go-to meeting. Is it somewhere in the 260 something? I can't get it to move, sorry. But this is essentially our interview test fit plan, which has the 3 wings with the central core, parking spaces, and the site. And again, we're looking at tightening this up. And then lastly, you can see this impacts the eastern side, the Constitution Ave side, and keeps Adams and everything west of that untouched. And, you know, the building footprint, site amenities, and parking. So what I think what our ultimate goal is on this is to try and maybe keep the federal from being impacted and, you know, again, tighten that number of units down. Was there, I thought
Sure,
there was a, go ahead.
This is another sort of late add site. I'm going to revisit the housing authority in a second, Dawn, when we get to the final slide.
I got confused. It was like, wait, I thought he wanted to talk to it. So please keep going.
Yeah, I think we'll talk to that on the final slide. But this is actually an idea that I'm talking with people. Dawn and I went back and forth a little bit, and again, I know I've said it 3 times during this meeting, but we're trying to turn over every stone. And this is an area down between the Parkway, Lee Burbank Highway, and Furlong Drive. So I'm calling it Furlong, right next to the newer police department, which is on the bottom right, police fire department. So, I mean, it is 17 acres. It has flood issues. It has water issues. But as you can see, comparatively to some of the other potential eminent domain areas, it averages out to less value, mainly because most of this is mobile homes. There are some larger buildings over in the area C that that $11.4 million assessed value over there contains a few larger buildings. Maybe or maybe not, it might be needed, but it somewhat central site, not a great site for a school, but again, we're trying to turn over every stone, and we want a history of us looking at this in the site subcommittee and this committee, ultimately making decisions if these are feasible or not. So there's a lot more due diligence on this one. There are definite flood issues here. It's not really shown, but where the area A and B kind of connect on that curved line is basically a drainage creek. So not a wonderful site, but something we're looking at nonetheless. So this is, and Don, I think I just saw the chat. I'm interested in, as we pause on this last slide for a minute. This is a slide that really just starts to talk about site ownership. Does the city own it? Does the city not own it? Assessed values, and on the right side of the vertical line, summarizing the potential eminent domain areas that we're throwing around right now to quantify them. Again, these are only assessed values. There aren't relocation costs put into this. But the other thing this is trying to do is the rightmost column. It's trying to tell you about how much acreage you would end up with via some combination. So starting at the top, the existing high school is 26.8 acres is what's owned by the city. That's assessed just over 51 million. You wouldn't have to buy it. Over on the right are 4 versions with the 120 lots is basically everything we showed there. And that's the scenario that would never be needed. But the ones below it, East Mountain Ave only, it shows it's 29 lots, about 13 million in assessed value. School Street only is that scheme where the building was out towards School Street on those 3 blocks built new next to the existing school. That area is about 48 properties with approximately a $25 million assessed value. And that Revere Street only line is sort of the Ambrose Park out to Revere Street concept. 41 properties, about 22 million in assessed value. Going down the line here, the Housing Authority site is totals out to be somewhere around 40 acres. And what I just wanted to point out, if anyone's looking back at this, the way this is just set up might be a little confusing, but the green highlighted cells on city-owned acreage for the Housing Authority, Stop and Shop, and Furlong, basically that acreage is right-of-ways and sidewalks. Everything to the right of the line is property line to property line lots. So at the Housing Authority site, it's actually, even though it's 300-something units, it's 80 lots with a 33.4 acre size. And the assessed value of that entire complex is up around 74 million. Now, what I wanted to pause on this site is the main challenge of this site is always going to be that we have to have housing ready for people that would be relocated to be able to get in there and work. So that's something that we need to follow up with the city and some other folks on what is the capacity, what might be the capacity in 2 or 3 years when we'd theoretically be ready to build. And that might really either limit what we can do at this site, or it might prove that it's possible. So while there isn't anything circled in red here, circled in red is sort of, you would have to expend money to purchase it or eminent domain it. There would be a relocation cost to relocate all of these folks. And once I finish going down through this sheet, I want to talk about involving a consultant to help us out with relocation plans for each of these options. But just to keep running down here, Wonderland is only 1 parcel. 28 acres. It's assessed over 21 million. On the right side, I'm not showing any, but we don't believe you'd have to go any further than that. We're not even sure we'd need that entire parcel. There'd probably be a good deal of that parcel that could be left for potential city development. So could be a purchase, could be eminent domain, but it's one property. Caddy Farms, the property itself, the Caddy Farms series of lots totals up to 25 acres. I could not find an assessed value. I'm going to work a little more on that. And that area going in that I noted we'd have to eminent domain our way in is an additional 13 properties, 2.5 acres with an assessed value at about 2.5 million. Those two would get you up to a 27.68 acre site plus or minus. And so obviously there's room there, and the options we've talked about to date, there's room at all of them. The options down below here, you can start, if you keep your eye on that right column, we start really getting challenged as far as the overall acreage. So the McKinley school site is only 1.14 acres. The all-in eminent domain going out to Park Avenue and even out to Broadway in one direction is 33 properties with about an $18.5 million assessed value. And that would only get you to 4.78 acres. So I think this might be a site that has a relatively short life in this feasibility study, but we'll continue to follow up with it.
Hey, Brian.
The Stop and Shop. Yep.
Yep. Sorry. Did you mention what our quasi magic number, target number was for acreage, or like a minimum we were looking for?
It sort of varies by 10 to 15 is kind of what I think we've been throwing around as the minimum. Is we would need to be up in the 10 to 15 to be able to do what we need to do, and could get a little smaller than that depending on the site, but anything under 10 is really going to be a challenge.
Right.
And probably would, in this case, 4.78 means no fields. So we'd never recover from that. The Stop and Shop Squire Road site, again, that number in green is the road going through there, 1.13 in acreage that isn't privately owned, but it doesn't have a purchase value. That all it means. It's 5 parcels that about 9.5 acres between the Stop and Shop parcel, the Squire parcels, and the state DPW yard, with an assessed value of about 15 million. That site could get upwards of about that 10 acres and could become a little more viable in a way if we can look more into those fields and if there's an opportunity over in St. Mary's to supplement this 10 acres with fields. The Furlong Drive site, you can see there's actually a good deal of acreage because there's a number of roads in there. There's almost 5 acres of roads and sidewalks, but it's 57 lots with about 12 acres of privately owned property and just shy of 30 million value all in. That site does max out to be about 17 acres, but again, in a flood zone, we might not be able to build on all 17 of those acres. So I'm sure we can pause and take some questions, but the other thing that I wanted to throw out there for the committee to consider is we've been working with a father-daughter combo, Peter and Jennifer Sleeper, who are consultants that specialize in eminent domain and relocation services, relocation planning. They've been doing it for years. They provided us a letter that we circulated to the site subcommittee with the qualifications. And what I'd like to do is to have them basically follow along the feasibility study for the next number of months and write up a relocation impact plan for each of these options, because some of these are going to involve potentially eminent domain, some of them might not, and the eminent domain is going to dramatically vary between if we're talking about a Wonderland site, again, one owner, unoccupied, or one of these sites that has dozens of both commercial properties and residences. So we do have a contingency value in the budget for the feasibility study. I believe it's $50,000. This would be some fraction of that. We do not have it quantified yet. I've asked Peter and Jennifer Sleeper to try to get together an actual proposal based on some phone calls we've had this week, their understanding of the process. So I don't think we need a motion or anything. I'm not looking for a real approval, but I think by the next meeting, I'd like a read on if this committee is okay with us involving them, potentially expending what I think will be a handful of $1,000s to use their services to craft up a relocation impact plan to help you use that as one bit of data to judge all of these sites and options by each other. And that might define the schedules, these relocation plans. Some of these sites that we'd have to assume are going to have a longer period to relocate people are going to push the schedule out. So that research of exactly how long would relocation take, in addition to what it would cost, will allow us to really start filling in real costs through all these options that we'll be showing you over the coming months. So they will be working on that proposal. I'd really just, I'd like sort of a read from the committee on if it's the kind of thing that I could get them involved with even in the coming weeks, knowing that they won't have a quantified proposal to us until the next meeting. That was basically all I had. I'm not sure if there are any questions, and a lot of the stuff, even Carl and a few of the other folks have been working with, is sort of hot off the press. So I'm sure if you want to give me a call in the coming days and sort of give me your thoughts on how we've been interpreting these sites, that would be helpful. But otherwise, anyone's free to throw any questions out there about the activities to date.
Brian, can I add something? This is Don Charmella. Can I add something about the Furlong Drive site?
Sure.
So when I sent that to you, I incorporated the global property, which is another 8.5 acres. And with the idea of straightening Furlong Drive out. So Furlong Drive would be basically moved over.
Got it.
So that assessed value on that property is 4.8 million on the global property. That's lot 1208. And that's another 8.5 acres.
All right, that's great. I'll update this map, because this might even just push or pull the sort of center of where we might be looking to show a test fit here. Maybe it's pulled off of Revere Beach Parkway. I think looking a little more into the water and topography here might enlighten that as well. But thanks for that.
Okay.
Brian, maybe we just want to mention what the plan is going forward with the site subcommittee. We have 3 more meetings coming up where we'll start sort of whittling down the number of these sites, and then at our next SBC meeting, which is currently slated for May 6th, we'll be looking to have this committee take a vote on which ones of these sites can start coming off the list, so that we can really start focusing on the ones that are really going to be applicable. This is sort of the first review, first glance, and then we have 3 more meetings with the site subcommittee where we'll start getting into the details and costs, and also involving the relocation experts, and so that we can make a recommendation for an SBC vote at next meeting.
Exactly. Thanks, Linda. And I think the process, the way we view it is the site subcommittee is sort of getting the full detail, and ultimately that might be the first group to say, you know what, we've learned enough on site X, Y, or Z. We just don't think that site's going to work. That's when we would sort of bump that to the building committee as a recommendation. We might not get there right away, but I think as we start laying out some of these options, some of them are certainly going to look better than others, and some of them will probably fall off sooner. So the trajectory will be site subcommittee makes a recommendation, it gets back to this committee. Ultimately, we whittle down to the options that we'll be pursuing in PSR and in the next month or 2. And also, just as a note, part of what the relocation folks are going to help us with is turning these assessed values into actual theoretical eminent domain values. So I would stress that assessed is always going to be lower, as I think most folks know, but we just needed to baseline it somewhere. So everything you've seen on the screen is just city assessment values.
And I think I'll add one more piece that we expect Sleeper to help us with one of many things, but specifically for me that I'm interested in is the schedule aspect. How long this process is going to take, in order for us to even put a shovel in the ground. That's basically what we're getting at. you know, how long will it take for us to get these parcels of land before we can start building? That's, they know the, you know, we've met them. I've talked with them a couple of times, and yeah, they know this process back and forth, and they've been through it, you know, for many years, and know all the hiccups and whatnot. So it would be good to have them along on our side.
Agreed. That was
Okay.
all I had, though.
Excellent. John, did you or your team have anything else that you wanted to add for today?
I don't. Joe, Dan, Bob, anyone?
I don't.
I see that we're at page 44 of 44, so.
Yep, this was the, I can go back to, sorry to make you dizzy, I can go back to the agenda. I should put it at the end as well. Yeah, so public comment would be where we are. New business, I guess.
Yeah. So I'll open it up to the SBC committee. If anybody has any questions or anything you want to add for this week. All right. Well then, if we could have a vote to adjourn the meeting, if somebody wants to make the motion.
Motion to adjourn.
That was Stacy. Motion.
Second, Susan Gravellisi.
Thank you, Susan. All right. So we will do the roll call to adjourn the meeting. Michael Picardi?
Yes.
Okay. And Stacy?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Carl Svensson?
Yes.
John Carella?
Yes.
And Rich Biscay?
Yes.
Don Ciramella?
Yes.
Nicholas Rystrom?
Yes.
And Jerry Visconti?
Yes.
And Patrick Keefe?
Yes.
Excellent. So we had Jennifer Hayes and Superintendent Kelly had to leave early, so they are noted as absent at this point. We will adjourn the meeting and we will resume the next meeting on May 6th. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.